When Prince performed, reality bent. Guitars wept. Stadiums became churches. Purple Rain alone redefined what a rock ballad could be. And his influence? You can trace it through every artist who's ever dared to be weird, sexual, and unapologetically themselves. But Prince wasn't perfect. People have criticized him for putting out too much music, for control issues, and for hoarding some of his best work in a vault where nobody could hear it. Prince obviously became a legend, but the journey that made him one was way stranger and a lot more defiant than most people realize. He had to fight labels, fight MTV, and even fight for his own name. So, how good was Prince actually? In 1976, a teenage Prince Rogers Nelson created a demo tape with producer Chris Moon in Minneapolis. He played drums, guitar, keyboards, and bass, all extremely well. The tape impressed Moon, who helped shop it to labels. By 1977, at age 19, Prince signed with Warner Brothers Records after they heard the demo and early recordings. They had no idea what they were getting into. Born June 7, 1958, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Prince grew up in a house filled with music and chaos. His father, John L. Nelson, was a jazz pianist and songwriter. His mother, Mattie Shaw, sang with his father's band. But here's what people don't always think about. While other kids were playing sports after school, Prince was practicing piano. While they were at parties, he was learning bass, then guitar, then drums. His parents divorced when he was around 10. Prince bounced between households and struggled with belonging. He later said music was the only place he felt in control. Now think about that. A kid so lost in real life that he built an entire universe in sound. But that same kid would walk on stage and command audiences like a man possessed. By age 13, he'd formed his first band, Grand Central, with Andre Simone and others. By 16, he was writing songs that mixed funk, rock, and R&B in ways nobody else was doing. Prince was talented, but it wasn't just talent. He was absolutely obsessed with breaking every rule music had. The thing is, the music industry in the late 1970s had very specific boxes. You were either black R&B or white rock, soul or new wave. Prince looked at those boxes and set them on fire. His first album, For You, dropped in April 1978. He was 19. He played and recorded all 27 instruments credited on the record. Critics were impressed by the technical skill, but radio didn't know what to do with him. Too black for rock stations, too rock for R&B stations, too weird for everybody. By 1979, Prince was 21 and determined to prove something. For You showed mastery, but it didn't break through commercially. He followed it with his self-titled album, Prince, that October. Then came Dirty Mind in 1980 and Controversy in 1981. Each album pushed further, more explicit, more androgynous, more boundary-breaking. He showed up on television in bikini briefs and a trench coat. Parents were horrified, but young people couldn't look away. You see, there's a moment that arrives for every artist who refuses to play it safe. The industry tries to sand down the edges, make you digestible, but Prince sharpened his edges until they drew blood. Record executives kept asking him to tone it down, pick a lane, be more like this successful artist or that one. And Prince kept saying no. Now, here comes the breakthrough. 1999 dropped in October 1982, and suddenly, the world couldn't ignore him anymore. Little Red Corvette crossed over to white radio. The album eventually went quadruple platinum.
You need a love that's gonna last. Guess I should close my eyes.
But Prince still wasn't satisfied. He wanted to mix genres like rock, R&B, funk, and pop into something that would make everyone from bikers to club kids lose their minds. But let me tell you about MTV first, because you can't understand Purple Rain's impact without understanding this. MTV launched in 1981 with a very specific vision: rock music. white artists. They initially resisted playing Little Red Corvette because Prince was black. It took pressure from Warner Brothers, who threatened to pull all their videos before MTV would air it. Once they did, the video became one of their most requested. But Prince still wasn't done making history. In June 1984, he released Purple Rain, not just an album, a movie, a statement, a complete artistic vision that refused to compromise. The album hit #1 and stayed there for 24 weeks. The movie grossed over $70 million. When Doves Cry became the biggest single of 1984. But here's what people miss. When Doves Cry has no bass line, no bass at all. Every producer told Prince that was commercial suicide. Radio needed bass. Prince said, "Watch me." The Purple Rain tour became legendary. Prince in his purple suit, doing splits and heels, playing guitar solos that made grown men weep. He wasn't performing. He was channeling something supernatural. Watch the footage. You can see the audience isn't just listening. They're witnessing something that feels like a religious experience. Purple Rain, the album, damn near destroyed every record in its path. It was the best-selling album and soundtrack of 1984. We're talking more than 25 million copies sold worldwide, 2 Grammys, an Oscar for Best Original Song Score, and a Golden Globe nomination. But success is complicated, because now everybody wanted a piece of Prince, and Prince wasn't sharing. The media realized they could sell magazines off him, calling him weird, calling him a freak, questioning his sexuality. Every eccentric thing he did became a headline, and Prince leaned into it by changing outfits between songs, building Paisley Park into his own creative kingdom, and overall refusing to play by industry rules. And the more successful he got, the more they tried to tear him down. Then there was the rivalry. Michael Jackson. See, while Prince was breaking musical boundaries, Michael was breaking sales records. Thriller versus Purple Rain. The media loved pitting them against each other. Michael was pop and Prince was rock. Michael could dance, but Prince could play 27 instruments. The comparisons were relentless. Michael actually wanted Prince on bad for a duet. He reached out, but when Prince heard the first line was, "Your butt is mine," he wasn't interested. So the rivalry wasn't real. Not really. They respected each other's genius. But the media always needs a story, and unfortunately, both of them became targets. Prince made one decision that changed everything. In March 1987, he released Sign of the Times, a double album that critics called a masterpiece. But Warner Brothers wanted singles, wanted hits, wanted another Purple Rain. Prince wanted artistic freedom, and the tension kept building. By the early 1990s, Prince was in open war with his label. Warner Brothers owned his masters, controlled his release schedule, treated him like property. So in June 1993, Prince did the unthinkable. He changed his name to an unpronounceable symbol, started showing up in public with "slave" written on his face. People mocked him, called him crazy, but Prince was making a point. If you don't own your work, you don't own yourself. He told reporters, "Prince is dead. Warner Brothers killed him." The media called it a publicity stunt, but it was a protest. He was fighting for every artist who'd ever been exploited by a label. The symbol years were strange, brilliant music trapped in a legal nightmare. He couldn't release what he wanted when he wanted. Some of his best work sat in the vault while Warner Brothers controlled what the world could hear. Albums like The Gold Experience in 1995 and Emancipation in 1996 came out, full of incredible songs. But the narrative was he'd lost his mind. The irony is, while people were calling him insane, he was still creating genius. The musicianship on those albums is still untouchable. Listen to The Gold Experience. That's a man at the peak of his powers, trapped in a system designed to break him. By 1996, his Warner contract expired. Prince took his name back, started his own label, NPG Records. He was finally free. But the damage to his mainstream reputation was done. Radio had moved on. MTV barely played videos anymore. The industry had decided Prince's moment was over. But Prince didn't care about the industry like that anymore. He started releasing music directly to fans, did residencies at Paisley Park, threw legendary parties where he'd perform until sunrise. He was doing what he always wanted, making music on his terms. And the vault at Paisley Park kept growing. Thousands of songs, unreleased, waiting. Then the internet changed everything. Prince fought streaming services, pulled his music from Spotify and YouTube. He wanted control over every note. Some people said he was stuck in the past, but he was trying to protect his art in a world that wanted to give it away for free. In 2016, Prince announced a piano and a microphone tour, stripped down, just him and a piano. The first show was transcendent. Prince at 57, still hitting notes that shouldn't be possible, still playing with the joy of a kid who just discovered music. He was planning a memoir, planning to finally open the vault. And on April 21st, 2016, Prince Rogers Nelson was found dead at Paisley Park. The news hit like a bomb. No warning, just gone. His death revealed things nobody knew. The pain he'd been in for years from performing in heels, from decades of splits and jumps. The medication he'd been taking just to keep performing. The man had sacrificed his body for his art, and nobody knew how much he was suffering. So how good was Prince actually? The numbers are insane. Over 150 million records sold worldwide, 7 Grammys, an Oscar for Best Original Song Score, a Golden Globe nomination, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on his first ballot. Purple Rain, alone, has sold more than 25 million copies. But numbers don't quite capture it, not even close. Watch The Weeknd perform. That's Prince's influence. Watch Janelle Monáe. That's Prince again. D'Angelo, Lenny Kravitz, Outkast, Frank Ocean, all of them. They're walking through doors Prince kicked open. He showed artists they didn't have to choose between black and white, rock and rhythm and blues, masculine and feminine. You could be everything at once. He changed what it meant to be a musician. Before Prince, artists specialized. After, the ones who mattered played everything. Music videos weren't just performances, they were art films. Purple Rain proved you could make a movie that was essentially a long-form music video and dominate the box office. He changed how artists think about ownership. Every musician who fights for their masters, who starts their own label, who goes independent, they're following Prince's blueprint. Taylor Swift re-recording her albums. That's Prince's war, continuing. Was he perfect? Of course not. He released too much music, and not all of it was great. He could be controlling and difficult to work with. His politics on some issues were complicated. He kept some of his best work locked away where fans couldn't hear it. But Prince's impact was way bigger than music. Prince Rogers Nelson fought the industry and won, then fought it again and won again. He never stopped creating, never stopped pushing boundaries, never stopped being exactly who he was, even when the world told him to be something else. He didn't get his final victory lap, didn't get to release the vault on his terms, didn't get to show the world just how much genius he'd been sitting on. But maybe that's what makes his greatness even more remarkable. He gave everything he had to music, and music gave him immortality. Now, Prince was so good that nearly a decade after his death, musicians are still trying to match his fearlessness, his refusal to be anything other than completely, undeniably himself. Watch this video on the screen next, and I'll catch you over there. Until next time, take it easy.